Welcome everyone. This is our second presentation of the day, revolving around Martin Luther and the Reformation 500. And our second presentation is by Pastor Doerr. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm nervous, but we'll make it through. So I'm talking about Luther and his family life today. And we're going to have a little game show today. So there's 4 prizes up here. So we have 4 rounds, and in each round I'll have 2 contestants competing against each other, and you will only have to answer 4 questions. So if you get more questions right than the other contestant, you can pick the prize. If you both tie, then you will split a prize. Each prize has 2 things in it, all right? So, our first round, we will be talking about Martin Luther and his relationship to his parents. Do we have any volunteers to compete in the first round of today's game show? There are prizes involved. Wonderful prizes. Really good prizes. They are multiple choice questions. Oh, okay. Lynn and I saw over there. Those were the first 2 I saw. So come on up, and we have nice cushy chairs. You get better chairs up here than you get.
And I figure if I pick the first one, I can look really stupid, and then, that'll make everybody else relax.
Have a seat, please.
Oh no, I'm against her.
Yeah.
Forget it. I'm Lynn Girls. I used to work with him. That's why I can pick him.
And I'm Anita Schultz.
All right. So you have an A, a B, a C, and a D, because there are multiple choice. So you're going to secretly, you can kind of not see each other. Okay, you can secretly pick a letter. Now before we get too far into the first round, I should read this quote. Little is known about the relationship of the young Luther with his father, and even less about that with his mother. So we know a lot about it. Yes, so if you don't know the answers, you're not alone. Nobody really knows much about Luther's parents. And while I'm at it, to distract people from you, we're going to send around a picture of Martin Luther's parents here. So I have in this book here the picture of Hans and Margaret Luther, Luther's parents. And then if you look a little farther, we'll be talking later about Luther's daughter, Magdalene. So you can look at her picture too. And then Martin Luther and his wife, Katie, about a year after their wedding. So we're going to pass that around. You can look at those pictures while we play. All right, so there's 4 questions. You get more answers than your competitor, and you get to pick an awesome prize. If you tie, you'll split the prize. Question number 1. Martin Luther's father, Hans, remained blank until 1 year before his death. A, an alcoholic. B, in debt. C, Catholic. Or D, angry at Luther for not becoming a lawyer. All right, go ahead, hold up your choice. They both chose C, Catholic, and they're both wrong. I'm not sure if we know exactly when Hans became a Lutheran, but certainly by the time he died, he had believed Martin Luther's teachings for some time. And in fact, his pastor asked him, "Do you believe what your son teaches?" And he said, "I would be a knave if I didn't." So he thought it was just obvious that his son was right. He wasn't an alcoholic, although he enjoyed a drink now and then. His younger brother, he was Hans, and then one of his younger brothers was also Hans. So it was Big Hans and Little Hans. Gross Hans and Klein Hans. And Klein Hans, on the other hand, he liked to drink a lot, and we have at least 11 times he's in the police record in Mansfeld. When there was a fight in the bar, he liked to dump his beer on the guy that he disagreed with, or slap somebody's hand with his sword, and so on. So, but not Gross Hans, Luther's father. And the answer was in debt. Actually, Hans Luther must have been a very trustworthy man because he had investors who invested thousands of dollars in his business running a copper smelter. And depending on the copper market, sometimes the Luthers were doing well, and Hans had 20 horses. And sometimes they couldn't hardly put anything in the offering plate or feed their own family. And not until a year before his death was Hans finally really in the clear, and all his debts were paid off. So B was the answer. All right. Good try. Sorry. A little bit. Sorry. Yeah, you're even. You'll get a prize even if you get one right. Because there will be a tie. Oh. Here's the second question. What is the one thing Martin Luther mentioned about his father Hans's spiritual influence when Martin was a child? A. He prayed at Martin's bedside each night. B. He took Martin on a pilgrimage to Rome. C. He taught Martin the Ten Commandments. Or D. He bought Martin his first Bible. A was he prayed at his bedside each night. B was pilgrimage. C was he taught him the Ten Commandments. And D was he bought him his first Bible. Alright, hold up your answers. You're both picking that he taught Martin the Ten Commandments, and you are both wrong. As far as we know, Martin learned the Ten Commandments at school. At Latin school, they drilled the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer and so on. Again and again, because the teacher was mostly busy with the older kids. So the young kids just drilled those. But the answer is A. That Gross Hans prayed at the children's bedside every night. Of course, Martin did go on a pilgrimage to Rome later on as an adult, but his father was along on that trip. Moving to Martin Luther's mother, Margaret, is our next question. We're still tied. 0-0. Margaret Luther once caned her young son Martin to the point of drawing blood. Because what had Martin done wrong? Maybe you've heard this story before. This is a little more common story. A. He had taken God's name in vain. B. Disobeyed his teacher at school. C. Made noise in church. Or D. Stolen a nut.
Because we work together and always have the same answer. We get something.
All right, maybe one more time.
We call that table talk.
Is that Luther's table talk? We have taken God's name in vain, disobeying his teacher, making noise in church, or stealing a nut. A lot of whispering out in the crowd. We're going to see what we get here. And the answer is D, stealing a nut. And that is the right answer. So some biographers will say, oh, look how strict Luther's parents were. But we get the impression that that was nothing unusual back in that time. And in fact, Luther loved his parents very, very much and knew that they loved him. So it doesn't seem as though this caning incident left any kind of scar on Luther's personality, but does show that he learned to fear God and take his parents very seriously as a child, which nothing wrong with that. We don't know what kind of nut it was, in case you were wondering. But even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. So you got one right. Yes. Very good. This is the last question now, the fourth question. As was typical of their peasant family background, although they weren't really peasants anymore, they were more middle class by the time they had their family. Hans and Margaret taught their children to fear the devil and the devil's servants, the neighborhood witches. Which of these is not a story that Martin Luther told and believed about his childhood? So you have picked the wrong answer now. A. As Hans Luther was visiting a dying miner, the man asked Hans to look at his rear end, which he claimed had been beaten and cut up by the devil. This scared Hans to the point of serious illness. So A is a dying miner's rear end. B. The devil plagued Hans on a journey, blocking his path with a flooded river, starting a chimney fire outside the bedroom door where he was staying, and almost dropping a stone on his head the size of a large pillow from a crumbling bathroom ceiling. So B is the plague journey. C. The neighbor lady, who was a witch, put a curse on the pastor that killed him after he had preached against witches, and she also poisoned Martin's younger brother so that he died. So the murderous neighbor lady witch is C. And D, also about the neighbor lady witch, who put a spell on all the Luther children so that they screamed as if they were close to death. Which of these is not a story Martin Luther told and believed about his childhood? There are nice prizes up here. Okay, you ready? What is it? The witch killing the pastor and Martin's younger brother? At least Martin Luther believes that was true. So that is the wrong answer. The answer you should have chosen was B, the plague journey. That actually happened to Martin himself. The last journey that he made before his death, all of these things happened to him. There was, in fact, a stone fell in the bathroom ceiling that almost killed him. Of course, then he did die a few weeks later of illness. But that didn't happen to his father. So that was a little tricky question, but you were wrong. So you both got 1 point, and you get to choose one of these 5 prizes here and divide it up between you. Go ahead. They are all different from one another. I'm not going to tell you which is which. You can grab hold of one, and why don't you show us what you got? And you can arm wrestle for who gets what. This is a Thuringia sausage because Luther grew up in Thuringia. That's from Usingers downtown. And a Playmobil Martin Luther. Yeah. Her husband wants her to take the sausage. So, congratulations. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. One writer says if there is anything characteristic of the first 13 years of the Reformer's life, it is the absence of any striking events or experiences. So in other words, there isn't really anything unusual about the way Martin Luther grew up. Maybe the one unusual thing we might say is how important it was to his parents that he get a solid education, because they wanted him to do even better in his life than they had done in theirs. They had to go to 2 funerals this afternoon, so they're not just leaving because they won a prize. By the way, I have all the questions and answers printed out for you, and after the game show's over, I'll hand them out, and then we'll have time, I think, for some questions about whatever we have covered so far. One more quote or thought for you. Sometimes we get the idea that Martin Luther, as a boy, if you read the stories about him, that he was a poor boy and he had to go from door to door singing to try to get food to eat. And in fact, that's not really how it was. That was more like trick-or-treating, actually. Martin Luther, as far as we can tell, his mother Margaret was from a pretty well-off family. And when Martin moved to Eisenach to go to a better school, actually many of his aunts and uncles and cousins already lived there. And he had many connections, and we should not get the impression that he went off to school and was this poor and lonely boy. That probably wasn't like that at all. We're going to go to round 2, and in round 2 we'll start Luther as an adult. We'll have a few questions about Martin Luther's ideas about marriage, and then about his marriage to Katie. So we need 2 more contestants. We still have 3 wonderful prizes. Yes, sir. We have 1 contestant. Okay, and go ahead. All right. Come on up to the comfy chairs. Thank you for your bravery.
First the women, now the men.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
John Rupert.
And?
Phil Waggy, Fairview, Milwaukee.
Okay. Well, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
So, in 1522, Martin Luther would have been 39 years old, and it's already 5 years after he put the 95 Theses up on the door, and he writes a book, The State of Marriage, 3 years before he is himself married. In this book, what did Martin Luther say was the greatest good in married life? A. Actually, all of these things are good things that he said about marriage in this book, but you're picking the one that he thought was the greatest. Okay? A. Learning to trust God when money was tight. B. Learning to submit to God when your spouse is evil toward you. C. The strength marriage gives you to avoid sexual sins. Or D. Having children and raising them to worship and serve God. Trusting God when you don't have money, submitting to God when your spouse is bad, strength to avoid sexual sins, or having children and raising them to worship and serve God. Both are choosing the children, and they both are right. Here we are, 3 years before he's married, and Luther has some pretty solid thinking from the Bible and probably from his own upbringing about marriage. He probably would make a good husband, and maybe that's what Katie was thinking. Now, when the book was published, some of Duke George's men from neighboring ducal Saxony, so you had electoral Saxony, that's where Luther lived, and then next door was ducal Saxony, which was very Catholic still. That's where John Eck kind of ruled the roost, one of Luther's main enemies. Well, some of the men from Duke George were in electoral Saxony, and got hold of Martin Luther's new book, The State of Marriage. And what did they write back to the Duke about Luther's new marriage book? Only one of these is true. Okay. A. Luther praises marriage so much, he surely won't stay single for long. B. It's pretty good, considering it was written by the son of Satan himself. C. It would not be good for us poor husbands if bad wives would read it. Or D. He says you can even marry your own godchild. Stay Single for Long. Pretty good for written by the son of Satan. Hope the bad wives don't read it, or you can even marry your own godchild. Oh, we got two different answers. And they're both wrong!
Oh, come on.
Luther did praise marriage and did stay single for very long. And there was a rumor that actually Margaret Luther had, the rumor was she had worked in the baths, and that Satan himself had come appearing as a man, and they had slept together, and that Luther was the son of Satan, but that wasn't what they said. And in fact, there were laws against marrying your own godchild, because that was a spiritual consanguinity, and Luther said, that's rubbish, there's nothing like that in the Bible. But the correct answer was C. It wouldn't be good for us poor husbands if bad wives would read it. Because Luther said in another writing the next year about the same idea, a woman is a weak vessel and fragile, so that a man must endure much on her account if they are to stay united. That quote, we might say, well, probably Luther would learn quite a bit about the strengths of a woman when he got married, because Katie was a very strong woman. And on the other hand, we say that's really true, that as husband and wife, we need to look past our spouse's weaknesses if we want to have a happy marriage. And it is for this reason, Luther said, one seldom finds a good marriage, because we don't look past another fault. Pretty good stuff for a guy who wasn't even married yet, huh? All right, we are tied. Right? We both has one correct.
Oh, first.
Yeah. Somewhat suddenly, June 13th, 1525, Luther married a nun that he had helped escape from a convent a few years earlier. Probably not in the herring barrels, probably disguised as a wagon full of herring barrels. But Luther then had to explain to his friends, oh, by the way, I'm married, because it was kind of a surprise. And referring to the main reason Luther gave his surprised friends for why he had married Katie, one author said it is probably the worst reason for marriage ever recorded in the long history of the institution. What was Luther's main reason? Now, in fact, all of these reasons were true, so this is a tricky one again, but what Luther at that time at least said was his main reason. A, to defy the devil. B, to defy the Pope. C, to give his father Hans some grandchildren. Or D, to show he really believed his own teachings about monastic vows and marriage. They are all true, sorry, yes. Because I try to teach you things besides just the one answer, so it makes it harder for you. The last one, to show he really believed his own teaching. We again have two different answers, and again they're both wrong. To defy the devil. Now you can decide if you agree with that author who said that was probably the worst reason for marriage ever recorded. And Luther said, no, the devils will cry because he knew this, what a scandal in a good way this would cause. Luther not only got married, he married the next nun, and how brave really that made his followers. Well, I guess Luther really believes this stuff. We get one more question to break the tie.
You shouldn't have made it so hard.
Right. Before the next question, one more quote. As important as his marriage became in Luther's life, relatively little is known about it. So, again, we think, well, how do we know things about Luther's marriage? Well, people were at the table all the time, and so if they heard Luther talking to his wife in front of everybody, they might write that down. But usually they only wrote it down when it was something to do with the Bible. You know, if it was just personal talk about this or that, it wasn't written down because it wasn't spiritual maybe. Or we have some of the letters that Luther wrote to his wife. But again, like in one letter he'll say, I got your last 4 letters. But we don't have any of those. And so we know we only have a small fraction of the letters they wrote to one another. Their house was so full of people, it must have been special for them just to get into a room with just the 2 of them, and we don't know much about anything, what they talked about. So, well, we're going to try to spend time on some of the things we do know. Here's the last question for you. What phrase about Katie shows up repeatedly in Dr. Luther's letters to his friends and colleagues for the rest of his life? A. My Katie is exhausted from all the children. B. My Katie will be sending you a keg of her beer. She did brew quite a bit of beer. C. My Katie greets you. Or D. My Katie gives me a reason to keep living.
The question again?
What phrase did Dr. Luther often say, right, in his letters to friends and colleagues? Again and again, we've seen it.
Somebody's got it.
Okay, we have the keg of beer or Katie greets you. The correct answer is, my Katie greets you. Which may seem like a small thing, but I think it tells you that when all these people were around the dinner table, Katie wasn't just, serving up turkey. She was talking and making friends. She made friends with most of Luther's friends. And I think that tells us a good deal about their marriage. That she was treated on the same level socially as all the guys. Well, sorry. Are you correct?
That was a good thing.
No?
I just figured the obvious.
All right.
You just say, at the end of the letter, he goes,
Katie says hi. Yep.
exactly.
You want to show us what you won?
Another sausage
Another sausage.
and a book.
And
Martin Luther, Reformer and the Maker.
Yeah.
Great.
the first chapter of that book really is a nice chapter talking about Luther's years growing up
Okay.
with his parents.
Thank you.
Let's give him a hand. Before we go to the next round, I'll share a few things with you that maybe you already know. One thing is, as Luther's wife, Katie had to deal with a man who had a lot of health issues. One of them that happened again and again was stones, whether they were kidney stones or gallstones. They would just cripple Luther. They were so painful. On one occasion, a year after their marriage, he was suffering from the stones, and Katie said, well, what do you want anything to eat? And he asked for a fried herring and some cold peas with mustard. Anybody like to eat that? I think they're serving it though at the front.
They only have one serving.
And 2 of the guys from the medical faculty at the university stopped by and they were just horrified. What are you eating when you're sick? But apparently did the trick. He passed the stones and the next day he was back to work. Luther, he would have fainting spells. He had a heart condition later on. He would have pounding headaches day after day. And he said, I tried to do what the doctors say, so Katie won't be mad at me. But this was part of their family life. On one occasion, Katie herself was very ill for about a month, several years after their marriage. We have a note at the dinner table where they're talking about what it's like when you're dead. And Martin Luther says, well, just ask Katie. She was dead a few months ago. And Katie says, no, I didn't feel anything. So she got sick once in a while, or we read about her morning sickness when she was expecting and so on. But she had a lot of doctoring to do as Martin Luther's wife.
Why did one of the daughters die?
Yes, we'll talk about that in a little bit. One author says that when their first child was expected, which was about a year after their marriage, that Katie and Martin would have been very afraid. because the superstition was if a monk ever had a child with a nun, it would be a two-headed monster. But we don't have any, I didn't find any record, at least in the English table talk or the English letter, which I read all of them, that talk about Katie and the family. I didn't find any record of that. So I think that's just this author telling us here was the superstition. Luther had 6 children. 2 of the girls died. 1 died at the age of only 8 months. And then the second daughter was born a year or so after that. And she lived to be 14 years old. And she also died. We'll talk about her death later on, and the children later on too. One more note before the third round, and that is that Luther's house was very big. Maybe some of you have been to the Luther house in Wittenberg. It's kind of, I've only seen pictures, but it looks like a dormitory, right? It's very big, and the dining room is enormous, isn't it? Much longer than, longer than this room. And so, you think about the work.
That's where they did the beer.
I would guess so.
The whole, like half the basement.
So the work that Katie had to be in charge of the home, this was, I think of it like a dormitory supervisor. And not only that, they had almost a banquet every night. All these students, they didn't have dorms. They lived with the professors. Some of the professors charged a lot more than Luther did. And Luther's wife, Katie, was responsible for making sure everybody got fed and make sure all the students paid their fees, their small fee for staying there, and so on. And then they had the plague back then. At least on one occasion, their home became a hospital for plague victims in the summer of 1527. So imagine what that would be like to, at that time, already have 2 children, and then now your enormous home is being turned into a hospital. Many of your friends have left town to get away from the plague. So hard for us to imagine, I think, some of the things that the family went through. All right. If you're falling asleep, you might want to volunteer or to be the next contestant. For round 3, we'll talk a little bit more about the children here, especially in the next 4 questions. Luther and his children. Don't be too afraid. Come on. Okay. Good. Need one more contestant. These questions are a little lighter, if that encourages you to come on up. Come on now. Oh, somebody's coming here. All right, very good.
Oh, wow.
Very good. We're going to need 2 more contestants, by the way, so start finding your courage somewhere. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Ron Fletch from St. Paul's in Muskegon.
Okay, and?
Carolyn Johnny Jack, and I belong to Fairview.
Very good. Very good. Here's your letter. Okay. Isn't it nice to have the volunteer? That's so much more fun than just having empty chairs. Which of these was an important source of income? Did I skip the question? I might have skipped the question. Oh, I did skip the question. Here, let's go back. Oh, okay. One writer said the best wedding gift Martin and Katie received was what? A salary for Martin. B, the Black Cloister as their house. C, money to pay Martin's many debts from helping runaway monks and nuns. Or D, a little farm outside of town to keep Katie busy. Salary, the house, money, or a little farm. And we have a salary or the little farm. The correct answer is a salary. Yes. You will read sometimes that the Black Cloister was given to them as a wedding gift. I don't think that is really accurate. Actually, a year and a half already before the wedding, Martin Luther said, we need to change the arrangement. Because the arrangement was that the monks owned the black cloister, and then they had creditors who were supposed to be paying the monks money, but the creditors were never paying their money. And then the monks were leaving, and as they left, they took with them whatever they supposedly had brought when they first came. And so the black cloister was losing money, and eventually it was just Luther and another guy, Brisger, in this enormous building. And so already a year and a half before their marriage, Luther is writing to the elector saying, can we give you back this building? Because we just can't take care of it, just the two of us anymore. And it was a month after the wedding that the details were finally worked out. I think that's what people say this was the wedding gift. But in fact, the wedding gift was the salary. Before this, Martin Luther made no salary. He did all his lectures and so on. He got a little bit, like 5 coins a year or something for preaching. And otherwise, they were supposed to live off of his income from the property owned by the monks, which was never coming in. So he wore through his cowl pretty far. He said he mended it so many times he couldn't mend it anymore. So he finally stopped wearing that and just wore street clothes. And the salary was a very good wedding gift. He did get some money as gifts, which pretty quickly was spent to pay for debts that already had been accrued by supporting runaway monks and nuns, so that was true. And later on, Luther bought Katie many little gardens and farms and so on to let her get away and help support the family. But the salary, so we have one for nothing. Okay, now to the income. Besides the salary, which of these was an important source of income for the Luther family? A. Gifts from Dr. Luther's many friends and admirers. B. The dozens of university students that lived in their home like a dorm. C. Katie's farms and gardens, brewery and fishing ponds. Or D. The profits from Luther's many books. We had gifts from friends and admirers, the fee that the dorm students paid, Katie's farms, gardens, brewery, and fishing pond, or D, the profits from Luther's books. Alright, so the profits from Luther's books is actually wrong. Luther never took money for all of his books. Yep, and his lectures, he did not get paid for those. And all the guys who sit at the table and wrote down everything he said and then sold that, he didn't take money from them either. I would have taken A or C, although C is kind of half right because I think they spent as much money on the farms and the gardens and so on as they made. So the answer I really wanted was A, the gifts. They got many, many gifts. People would send a clock, or the king of Denmark actually had an agreement to send him a barrel of herring and a barrel of butter every year. And then when he realized that's kind of tricky to send herring and butter that far, they just sent him money every year. So the gifts seem to be now they spent it really quickly, but I think can I give her a point?
Sure.
C? Because there were some authors that said the food and so on that they got from the garden was very important. So we'll count that too. All right, then with 2 questions, we're tied 1-1. Here's the 3rd question. Talking now about family life. What book did Dr. Luther daily learn and pray with his preschool-aged Henskin, little Hans, and Lenkin, little Lena? And, a clue, it is the same book that he encouraged Katie to read when she was worried about him, reminding her that she had once said, "Everything in this book has been said about me." Is it A, John's Gospel, B, the Psalms, C, the Small Catechism, or D, the Augsburg Confession? John, the Psalms, Catechism or the Augsburg Confession? What book did he daily learn and pray with his preschool children? We have John's Gospel or the Catechism, and the correct answer is Catechism. I think that is a really neat picture, isn't it? To just picture Martin Luther with a 5-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, or a 3-year-old daughter, and here's the guy who wrote the Catechism, and he's just talking as a dad about the Catechism and praying about, let's talk about the commandments today and praying about it. Wouldn't that have really been a special thing to be a part of? All right, well now we really have a game here, huh? 2-1.
People getting ready.
Yeah. 4 years after his marriage, Luther is away from his family for a while because of the Diet of Augsburg in 1530. Luther didn't go to Augsburg because it was too dangerous, as he was going to be an outlaw. So he was a little ways away in the fortress of Coburg. But because of this important time when the Augsburg Confession was going to be given, a lot of Luther's letters or thoughts were saved from this time, and so we get some insights. One of them is at this point, Martin Luther gets the news that his father has died, May 29, 1530. And Martin Luther's friend Dietrich said Luther wept so greatly that the next day his head hurt. He wrote, "This death, his father's death, has certainly thrown me into sadness, thinking not only of the bonds of nature, but also of the very kind love my father had for me. For through him, my Creator has given me all that I am and have." That tells us a good deal about, I think, Luther's relationship with his dad. And Luther recognized, if my dad hadn't worked so hard to support his family and to send me to the schools that he sent me to, there's no way that I started the Reformation or all that I am and have. God gave me through my dad. Neat thing. Also, from the Castle Coburg, we have a famous letter that Martin Luther wrote to 4-year-old Hans, his son. And in it, he describes what heaven is like and tells little Hans, okay, do your studies and say your prayers so you can go there. In the letter, what did Dr. Luther say little boys got to play with in the gardens of heaven? A, silver muskets. B, silver crossbows. C, solid gold toy soldiers. Or D, solid gold toy warships. There are ponies there, yes. But one of these things, muskets, crossbows, toy soldiers, or warships. You have to pick an answer. You have muskets or toy soldiers. No, they're both wrong. The answer is the silver crossbows. And in fact, in the Middle Ages, the crossbows were illegal because they were seen as too deadly. Christians wouldn't use such a deadly weapon, but I think by Luther's time, they had even more deadly than crossbows. So we have a 2-1. Good job. And you can pick your prize. Reformation hat. And I bet you can't guess. That's right. That's right. If we have time before we're done, I have the letter that Luther wrote to little Hans, and we can read that. But we'll keep moving and see if we have time. In English, of course. Also, while he was in the Castle Coburg, his wife Katie sent him a present. It was a picture of their daughter Magdalena, and this was a great treasure to Luther while he was away from home for I think 4 or 5 months. And Luther's friend wrote to Katie, "You did something very good when you sent the picture to the doctor, for it helps him to forget many troubling thoughts. He has attached it to the wall opposite the table in the chamber where we eat." That's a neat picture. Just Luther looking at the drawing someone had made of his daughter. Another picture now, that we're 3 years after this, 1533. This just surprised me and something I never really imagined. In the table talk, we read about a day when Dr. Luther went out with his wife into the garden to fish in the pond and on the bank of the river. And it sounds like they fished for a while, because listen to what they caught. Pike, loach, I don't know what kind of fish a loach is, trout, black-tailed and carp. So they at least caught 5 fish. Isn't that a picture? Just the two of them fishing together. You ever imagined that before? Some of them we ate that night with great delight, and the doctor said, "Katie, you are more pleased over these few fish than many a nobleman when he fishes in several large ponds and catches thousands of fish. Alas, greed and ambition prevent us from enjoying them." Well, here again, you see, we get a little detail, but it's only because Luther made a Bible point about it at the dinner table. Otherwise, we're just hungry for what did the two of them do for fun. Something I don't really have in the presentation is the descriptions of their Christmas times together. We do have some descriptions of Christmas time, which is a very joyful thing, but we're not really going to cover them today. We have the last round, one last wonderful prize. Probably can't guess what happened to this. Let's get 2 contestants here. Come on up. Okay. And one more contestant. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid you'll be seen as a greedy person who only wants the prize. Come on. One more person. All right. There we go. Very exciting, I know. Pastor Boggy, would you like the answer sheet before you ask the reading? I got Doerr, who needs to have. All right. Would you introduce yourself? And thank you for playing our game today. Ready? Good luck. Which of the following situations was not used by Dr. Luther, as far as we know, to teach the people at the dinner table or in his living room a lesson about God? So 3 of these he did use, 1 I made up. A. 6-month-old Martin Jr. pooping on his father's lap. B. 14-month-old Martin Jr. crying unconsolably for an hour straight. C. 7-year-old Martin Jr. defending his wedding bride doll from his father's teasing. Or D. 11-year-old Martin Jr. saying the meal prayer in front of all the guests. Which of those was not used by Dr. Luther to make a spiritual point at the table? The poop, the crime, the doll, or the prayer? They're both picking the poop. And that is wrong. Actually, that really did happen. He fouled his father's lap. And Luther said, that's just how we treat God, but he still loves us. The one that was slightly changed, actually, was 11-year-old Martin Jr. saying the meal prayer. In fact, he read a gospel reading. I thought that was a neat picture, that here's his 11-year-old son in front of all these guests. He read a little Bible reading at the dinner table for everybody. And then Martin Luther did talk about that. Sorry. Second question about their third daughter, Margaret. How had Dr. Luther once absent-mindedly endangered his infant daughter Margaret's life? 3 of these I made up. 1 is true. Okay. He didn't watch her while she was crawling next to the river. He let her get into some of his medicine bottles. He held her in his arms when he went to chase some robbers out of the house. Or he came home and held her face after visiting and touching some plague victims. The river, the medicine, the robbers, or the plague. Both picking the robbers, and you are both wrong. No, I made that up. But one day after visiting some plague victims and touching them, as a good pastor, he came home and forgot where he had just been and grabbed his little daughter. Now, she did not get 60 with being an adult, but he looking back on it, he realized that was a dumb thing to do. He should have washed his hands first after coming home. Well, all right, we're 0 to 0. Okay. Something I'm not going to read it to you, but I have on the handout. I'll give it a little bit. We have 1 year. Martin Luther wrote a little treatise about his household and how hard it was for them to keep afloat financially. And we actually have lists of all the things the Luther household bought during that year. And this, I'll just show you how long the list is. And this, to me, it's kind of fascinating just to go through it and see all the different grocery items they bought, and then all the different kind of people they had to pay. Somebody to make knives for them, somebody to make ropes for them, and so on and so on. I'll give that to you. You can look at that and just get an idea. I think Katie Luther was a busy woman, taking care of all of this stuff. They had the enormous home and then numerous farms and gardens in town, outside of town. That Katie was really like a Proverbs 31 kind of a woman, Katie Luther was. And of course, she had help. They had servants. We don't know how many servants there were. Sometimes they complained about how disobedient or lazy the servants were. And at one point, we have a list of the taxable livestock. They had in 1542. They had 5 cows, 9 calves, 1 goat with 2 kids, 8 swine, 2 sows, and 3 piglets. You assume that I don't know, horses weren't taxable. I assume they had some horses and so on, but that was the list from 1542. All right, here we go. A little break for you. Now we have another question. Which of these statements, so we're moving forward to the death of their daughter Magdalene in 1542 at the age of 14 years old. Which of these statements from the days surrounding the death of their daughter Magdalene was actually said by Katie and not Dr. Luther? So 3 of them were said by Dr. Luther, 1 by Katie. A. Ah, yes, I have loved this dear child too much. B. Last night I had a dream in which I saw 2 fair youths, beautifully attired, who came as if they wished to take Magdalene away with them and conduct her to be married. C. When the coffin was somewhat too small, your couch here is narrow, but oh, how beautiful is that on which you rest above. Or D. God has not given such good gifts these 1,000 years to any bishop as he has to me. Above the coffin, be too small, and a fine couch in heaven. No, that actually Luther said that. The first one was the dream. The night before Magdalene died, Katie had this dream and told Philip Melanchthon about it in the morning. I think we're going to have time. I brought an account that is one thing. We have a fairly detailed account of how the Luthers acted as the death of their daughter approached, and as their daughter was put in the coffin and laid into the ground, the different things that they said. And this is 4 years before Martin Luther's own death, and already years before this, Martin Luther said, I'm ready to die anytime now. Can you imagine how that would be for Katie, to hear your husband talking about this all the time, and it certainly didn't decrease after another of his daughters now was in heaven. He was ready to go and to be with her. On a different occasion, he had Martin Luther on his lap, and he said, "If you should become a lawyer, I'd hang you on the gallows. You must be a preacher." In fact, none of his children grew up to be preachers. I thought that was quite a thing to say to your child. One more quote, and then we'll get to the last question. The children were tutored privately by older students. So they had a private tutor in the home who would teach the children. And we have this note from one author I read. Luther was very strict with his oldest son, Hans. Unlike the younger Magdalene, he hardly ever made merry with him, for he thought boys should be raised more strictly than girls. We see later with Martin Jr., one of the later sons, he is playing with him and teaching him. So I don't know if Luther softened up, or he saw maybe this wasn't the best way to do it, or we just have different stories about different kids. Anyway, already at the age of 7, Luther enrolled his firstborn son Hans at the university. Apparently they let him in as an honor to his father, and already at the age of 13 he was getting his bachelor's degree. So we wonder, what kind of expectations Luther had for his firstborn son. Maybe were they too high, or what? It's always a challenge. If you have many children, I have many children, you do learn quite a bit as you're going along about how to be a parent. And that was the case for her. Finally, of Martin and Katie's children who lived to adulthood, here's your last question. Are we still time? 0 to 0? Which became the most famous? Which of his children became the most famous? Hans, who became a lawyer and politician. Martin Jr., who didn't become a pastor but did become a theologian, studied the Bible. Paul, who became a doctor. Or Margaret Luther, who became the wife of a Brandenburg nobleman. The lawyer, the theologian, the doctor, or the wife? Which of the Luther children became the most famous as an adult? We have the doctor or the wife, and the correct answer is the doctor. Yeah. Probably Magdalene was the most famous because of the story of her death at age 14. As far as an adult, Paul became a very prominent doctor, even was doctor to the elector, so the leader of their territory. So you get to pick a crown. Show us what you got. A sausage.
And a book on Katie's